Hey everyone, welcome back. We've been digging into some of the materials you all sent in about the growing demands on managers, especially in fields like healthcare, education, and human services.
Yeah, really interesting stuff.
And one theme that's been popping up over and over again, just how much time leaders in these roles are spending on, well, basically just trying to keep things staffed.
Right, keeping the wheels turning.
Exactly. And it's almost like the more time you spend on managing the team, the less time you actually have for the work itself, like patient care, student outcomes, really serving the people you're there to serve.
Absolutely. It's that balance, right? Trying to juggle the day-to-day with actually moving things forward.
That's exactly it. So we started thinking, what if there was a way to kind of, I don't know, offload a chunk of that? And it got us thinking about partnering with professional staffing agencies. But we realized it's not just about filling a position, right?
No, not at all.
It's about offloading a ton of those administrative tasks that, let's face it, take up way too much time.
Yeah, they can really eat away at your day.
So that's what we really want to explore today, how partnering with a staffing agency can free up leaders to, well, to lead, to focus on what really matters. So I'm curious, have you ever felt like you're drowning in paperwork and schedules instead of, I don't know, actually being out there making a difference?
I think that's something so many people can relate to. It often starts gradually. You don't realize how much those administrative tasks are piling up until it's almost too late.
This is a slow creep.
Exactly. And when we talk about the hidden costs of handling all this staffing internally, it goes way beyond just, the cost of posting a job ad or something like that.
Oh, for sure.
It's about the cost of your leadership's time and focus being pulled away from the things that really matter. Think about it. Like, picture the head of a nursing department spending hours sifting through applications instead of, I don't know, working on new initiatives to improve patient care.
That's such a good point.
That's a real cost, not just in terms of efficiency, but in the quality of the work you're able to do. And, ultimately that affects your bottom line.
Absolutely. And I think, it's easy to overlook just how much goes into managing a contingent workforce.
Yep.
Like if you actually sat down and listed everything out,
Oh my gosh, yeah.
it would be pretty overwhelming. You've got the whole recruitment side, crafting job descriptions that actually attract the right people, getting those out there, the flood of applications that comes in and screening all those. Then you got interviews, checking references, making sure credentials are all in order. And then there's background checks. And that's all before someone even starts.
I know, it's crazy.
Then you got to onboard them, figure out the scheduling nightmare, track everyone's hours. And with temporary staff especially, there could be all kinds of different pay rates and overtime rules and things like that.
Oh, absolutely. It gets complicated fast.
And then there's benefits administration, making sure everyone's getting the right coverage. And then on top of it all, you've got to monitor performance, manage any issues that come up, and stay on top of all the legal and regulatory stuff, which seems like it's always changing.
Got to be on your toes.
It really is a whole other job. And so when your leadership team is trying to juggle all of that on top of their actual responsibilities, it just seems like it's setting everyone up for burnout.
Oh, absolutely. It's a recipe for burnout. When those responsibilities are spread so thin and you don't have people who are really dedicated to them, it's just not sustainable. Imagine a school principal. Instead of focusing on things like curriculum development or supporting teachers, they're stuck chasing down missing timesheets.
It's just not the best use of their time or expertise.
It's not. And then, important things can slip through the cracks, like a discrepancy in a background check or a pattern of performance issues, things that maybe someone would have caught if they had the time and bandwidth to really focus.
And the big picture stuff, the strategic planning, the vision for the future, all that gets pushed aside.
Exactly. And that hurts everyone in the long run.
Okay, so if this is the reality, this kind of administrative overload, how does a staffing agency actually help? Like, I get that they can help you find people, but it's more than that, right?
Right. Think of it like this. They're the experts in all the things we just talked about. All that complex, time-consuming stuff that comes with managing a workforce, especially a contingent workforce. It's like strategically outsourcing that whole side of things to a team who does it day in and day out.
And you're still in control.
Exactly. You're still the one setting the bar, determining what you need, the qualifications and all that. But they handle the nuts and bolts of actually finding those people, vetting them, and managing them.
That makes a lot of sense. Like take payroll, for example. I mean, it sounds simple enough, but with all the different types of employees, different rules, it can get pretty messy pretty fast.
It really can. So with the staffing partner, They take that whole thing off your plate. They make sure everyone's hours are tracked accurately. They handle all the tax stuff. They make sure people are paid on time correctly. And they're on top of all the different pay rules and regulations. And think about all the potential errors that get avoided, all the headaches you don't have to deal with.
And all the time you get back.
Exactly. Time that you can spend on things that actually matter.
And then there's benefits. Managing benefits for a contingent workforce, that has to be a whole other level of complexity.
It is. But again, that's something a good staffing partner will handle seamlessly. They take care of the enrollment process. They're on top of all the different plans and options. They deal with claims, and they're always up to date on the latest regulations. It really takes a huge weight off your shoulders.
That's huge. It's like having a whole dedicated HR team for your contingent staff.
Exactly. And speaking of things that can be a huge time suck, timekeeping. Especially in larger organizations or places with a lot of temporary staff, relying on manual timesheets or outdated systems, that can be a nightmare.
Oh yeah, that's asking for trouble.
It is. So staffing agencies, they invest in really good timekeeping systems. Often they have software that integrates directly with their payroll platform, so everything's streamlined and automated.
That makes a lot of sense. Less room for human error.
Exactly. And a lot of these systems have built-in checks and balances. Like they'll flag things like missed clock-ins or potential overtime issues before they become a problem.
So you can catch things early and avoid those last-minute scrambles.
Exactly. It just makes everything run so much smoother.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the administrative side of things, but I know you mentioned earlier that a staffing partner can also play a more strategic role in workforce management. What does that look like?
Well, it's about taking a more proactive and holistic approach to staffing. Instead of just reacting to immediate needs, you're planning ahead, you're optimizing your workforce to meet your long-term goals.
Okay, so more than just filling holes as they appear.
Right, and scheduling, that's a perfect example, especially in fields like healthcare, social services, where you might have round-the-clock operations. Creating schedules that work for everyone, that meet all the requirements, that's incredibly challenging.
It's like a giant puzzle.
It is. But staffing agencies, they have a lot of expertise in this area. They understand the nuances of different industries. They have sophisticated scheduling software. They can factor in staff preferences, regulatory requirements, everything.
So it takes that whole burden off your plate.
It does. And it means your managers can focus on, actually managing instead of getting bogged down in scheduling logistics.
Now, I think a big concern for a lot of leaders is, okay, we're bringing in all these people, but how do we know they're going to be good? How do we maintain quality?
That's a great question, and that's where the ongoing management piece comes in. Reputable staffing agencies, they take responsibility for the people they send you. They're not just, throwing people at you and hoping for the best.
Okay, so it's a partnership.
It is. They'll have systems in place for evaluating performance. They'll get feedback from you on how their staff are doing, and they'll address any issues that come up. So you're not left alone to manage all that.
That's a relief. And what about, those inevitable interpersonal conflicts that pop up in any workplace? How does that work with contingent staff?
Well, that's another area where a staffing partner can really step in and help. If a conflict arises that involves one of their staff, they'll often take the lead in mediating and resolving the situation. They have the HR expertise to navigate those tricky waters, and they can do it in a way that's, fair and professional.
So it's less drama for everyone involved.
Exactly. And it saves your managers a ton of time and stress.
Okay, so all of this sounds great, but I know the big question for a lot of people is going to be, what about the cost?
Sure. And I think it's important to look at the cost-benefit picture as a whole. It's not just about comparing hourly rates. It's about understanding the value of the time you're getting back.
So how do you even begin to calculate that?
Well, one way to start is to actually sit down and track how much time your management team is spending on all those different tasks we talked about. Everything from recruiting to onboarding to performance management, the whole 9 yards.
Really break it down.
Right. And then multiply that time by the fully loaded cost of your management staff. Their salary, their benefits, all the overhead that goes into employing them.
So you're getting a true picture of what you're actually spending.
Exactly. And then you have to ask yourself, what could we be doing with that time? What strategic initiatives are we putting off? What quality improvements are we not making? What additional services could we be providing?
What's the opportunity cost?
Exactly. And often when you really do the math, you find that partnering with a staffing agency can actually save you money in the long run. Even if the hourly rate for their staff is a little higher, the efficiencies you gain, the time you free up, it often more than makes up for the difference.
So it's an investment, not just an expense.
That's a great way to put it.
Now, for our listeners who are in healthcare or human services, we talked earlier about how staffing agencies can help with case management. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Sure. So in these fields, you often have clinical supervisors or program managers who are spending a lot of time on case management tasks. Things like coordinating care plans, managing client documentation, making sure services are delivered smoothly. And a staffing partner can provide support in these areas. They might have staff who can help with things like organizing documentation, coordinating communication between different providers, following up with clients.
So it frees up the clinical staff to actually focus on, clinical work.
Exactly. It allows them to spend more time with clients, to handle more complex cases, to really use their expertise where it's most needed. And in education, it might look like having support for things like managing IEPs, helping with behavioral interventions, or even just communicating with families.
Taking some of that administrative burden off the teachers and administrators.
Precisely. And I think it's important to note that technology plays a huge role in all of this. Modern staffing agencies, they're leveraging technology to streamline operations, to reduce manual processes, to make everything more efficient.
So it's not just about people, it's about systems.
It's about both. They'll have things like advanced scheduling platforms that can automate a lot of the scheduling process, mobile timekeeping systems that make it easy for staff to track their hours, digital platforms for managing compliance documents, and a lot of these systems can integrate directly with your existing systems like EHRs or scheduling software.
So it's all connected, less room for error.
Exactly. And it means everyone has access to the information they need when they need it.
Now, I know a big concern for any organization is quality and compliance, especially in fields like healthcare and education. There are a lot of regulations to keep up with. How does partnering with a staffing agency affect that?
Well, good staffing agencies, they have really robust quality assurance programs. They're constantly monitoring their staff's performance. They're getting feedback from you. They're making sure their people are meeting your standards.
So they're not just sending people out and forgetting about them.
No, not at all. They're invested in making sure their staff are successful and that you're happy with the service you're getting. And they'll also have systems in place for managing compliance, making sure everyone's credentials are up to date, that all the paperwork is in order.
So it takes some of that pressure off your internal team.
It does. And it gives you peace of mind knowing that things are being handled properly.
Okay, so to wrap things up, it seems like partnering with a staffing agency, it's not just about filling empty slots. It's about a much bigger shift in how you approach workforce management.
Absolutely. It's about having a strategic partner who can help you navigate the complexities of staffing, who can take on a lot of the administrative burden, who can help you build a workforce that's flexible and adaptable.
And who can ultimately free you up to focus on what you do best.
Exactly.
So for everyone listening, I think the takeaway here is take a moment to really think about how much time you and your team are spending on all those administrative tasks related to staffing. And then imagine what you could accomplish if you had that time back. What strategic goals could you finally tackle? What quality improvements could you make? What impact could you have on the people you serve?
That's a powerful thought.
It is. And maybe, just maybe, partnering with a staffing agency is the key to unlocking that potential.
It's definitely worth exploring.
Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
See you then.